Hello, everyone. This is Les Muller from Data Leaders. I am your host on the Data Leaders podcast, and today I have on the show with me Eddie Short. Eddie is the Managing Director of Data and Analytics at Aon, and he will be speaking at our Data Leaders Transformation Roundtable in March on a very interesting topic regarding machine learning and AI. Eddie, welcome on the show.
Thank you, Les. I'm really pleased to be here.
Well, it's very good to have you. And Eddie, some of our audience members might already know you. You are quite active on social media. You also have a very impressive background in IT and technology. But for those audience members who do not know you yet, can you just tell us a bit about your journey of becoming a data leader?
Yeah, sure. So a long time ago, I originally trained as a chemical engineer. And that basically was all about capturing data and looking at how to make improvements. And through a graduate training program, I ended up going from engineering into IT. And it struck me that everybody was very focused on processes and systems and not very much focused on the inputs and outputs. And basically, being an engineer, I was very focused on what was going in and particularly in chemicals, very focused on what was going in and what was coming out. And on that basis, I really focused most of my career on, I'd say, the I of IT. So you could say that's data and analytics. But I've been very much in that space for over 20 years in a variety of different roles, both consulting and sort of industry leadership roles.
Fantastic. And yeah, you worked at BAT as well, and in different IT and technology roles throughout your career. What ultimately compelled you to actually get more involved in data? And also, maybe can you tell us maybe a couple milestones of your career?
Yeah, sure. So I think probably the key one, I did a lot of technology strategy. I went with a lot of companies in the first dot-com boom. But I really started focusing full time on data in 2001 when I was with Ernst & Young, as it became Capgemini Ernst & Young. And for me, a really major milestone came really between 2002 and 2004 when Capgemini asked me to build up the data practice. And I suppose a big milestone was when I became a vice president, or a partner equivalent, what we called business information management back in December 2004. So that was a big step. And from there, I was basically building not just Capgemini's UK data capabilities, but also I became the global leader around what Capgemini was doing around data. Another big step, you've already mentioned it, was BAT. And for me, that was a really significant change as I moved into from a consulting role into an industry role as a leader in a business services leadership role at British American Tobacco, where I was responsible as the sort of senior vice president for information management globally, working between finance, marketing, supply chain, operations, finance, and IT. And I suppose at that point I would have been the chief data officer before the title was actually invented. But that was a really significant milestone for me because it moved me away from just dealing with IT people, but also really focusing on the value of data, where is information and insight and data turns into dollars, pounds, euros, and that for me was a really critical milestone. So those are probably the two key ones I would pick out.
And definitely an impressive track record. And I know that you guys over at Aon, you do some very interesting stuff in terms of leveraging data and working with analytics in general. What are you focusing on at the moment in your current role?
So I'm focusing on three things: what we call data curation, analytical enablement, and what we've called people analytics. We collect an awful lot of data around people from companies around the world, but we need to improve the way we collect, manage, and store our data. I would say we're still collecting that in an early 21st century way. We want to basically move that management into, let's say, the 2020s. We're still spending an awful lot of time collecting, managing, and wrangling the data. And as we're a company that deals with people, we realize that we kind of, it's the classic people-intensive business where 80 to 90% of the time is spent managing, normalizing, standardizing the data, and less than 20% is actually spent adding value to it. So a key focus for us in terms of this data curation activity is both improving the way we collect the data, but then, as we said, applying machine learning techniques to how we can normalize and enhance it. Because the data we collect is not your kind of classical name and address data, which you can just get. There are standard tools for which allow you to basically manipulate and standardize it. We have quite esoteric data, and as it's around people, it's highly confidential. We have people's pay data, compensation data, and benefits. So we have to be very specific and precise about how we handle it. So that's a very key focus for me right now.
Mm-hmm. And your session in March will focus on leveraging data, leveraging machine learning for data success. So both to improve data quality and customer experience. So ultimately, from all the topics, why did you choose this one, and why are you so passionate about this area?
Because, it's, for me, data is the oil. It's the new oil that drives the economy of the world. I think you say on a personal level, we, and I not just mean me, but people around the world, give away their data to search companies, Google, social firms, Facebook, and yet we're far more distrusting of corporate entities like banks and utilities companies. And yet those organizations have actually looked after us and worked with us for years, if not decades. I think if I look at it from specifically in the context of Aon, where we collect data from customers, a quote was given to me that we become a burden to our clients. We put so much work to them to actually give us the data that we want for benchmarking and analysis purposes that clients are saying, well, we should be paying them for the data. And to my point of earlier, then we just change the game so that instead of spending 80% of our time collecting and managing the data and actually putting a big burden on our clients, we just got to make it seamless for our clients and improve the value add that we do ourselves. So this is where we bring in machine learning as a set of techniques and algorithms to both basically improve our end-to-end data handling and then data standardization, normalization, and reporting in order to make it seamless for our clients and actually much more efficient and effective for Aon.
Mm-hmm. And in the data leaders community, machine learning, I think it's one of the top three, hottest topics right now that people would like to discuss and learn more about. If you think about people in different businesses and professionals working in all kinds of data-related functions, so including business intelligence, analytics, data science, data governance, why do you think it's such a crucial area to learn more about for audience members like this?
So I think we've all been experts. I think in the area of data, we're all very technical. But the outputs, as they say, data is the oil of the economy. The outputs actually are money and, frankly, power. And as data leaders, we must be able to talk in those languages, both in terms of the technical and the business terms. But then equally, the fact that we are very, very technically excellent at actually manipulating, managing, and automating data, business leaders don't care. They just expect it to be done. Again, we need to be focused on where the money, show me the money. So we need to basically apply these techniques, machine learning and ultimately deep learning and artificial intelligence, in order to almost like do ourselves out of a job, or at least out of our old job. So that instead of focusing on the data wrangling, we're really focusing on how we create value from the data. And that might be quite scary for technical professionals who've been, we've had a very good run on traditional data for 10, 15, 20 years. but we've got to really change and evolve and recognize that a bunch of what we do should be and could be automated and improved. And that's where the machine learning comes in.
Mm-hmm. And I know for a fact that, a lot of people are looking into this right now. I think the bottleneck and the most difficult part, is actually, bringing it into reality. I mean, what are some of the key projects that you worked over your career, and maybe some of the successes that you built the content of your session around?
Yeah, so given that I came from, you'd say, an industry background, and I translated that into IT, probably I spent 10 years battling with big systems implementation projects, whether that was finance systems, enterprise resource planning, or customer relationship management, where the technologists and all the consultants were really focused on processes. And they treated data, things like data migration and reporting, as the nasty things to be tackled at the end of the project. When in fact, that's where all the value actually is, and was and is going forward. But that had been quite difficult to translate into actual financial outputs. When you look at a process, you can say basically there are 100 people working on this process. We systematize it, and suddenly there are only 50 people working on it. Therefore, we say 50 people's jobs. That equals X million dollars or euros of savings. They get a business case. What I spent a lot of time with is basically looking at where the value is and how do you actually quantify the value around data, so that we can rebalance the journey. In those times, we were working on the concept of big data before the term was invented, because we were looking at very much corporate systems. Now, if you look at it can be more easy to quantify the value of data, because we can relate it to people's jobs more easily. We can relate it to the change in efficiency and effectiveness in an organization. But it's still a key thing to actually convince a CFO of where the value is, in a way that he can quantify and actually say that is actually a credible business case that I'm prepared to sign up to.
Yeah, it sounds like a complex environment to navigate in. And if you think back, I mean, what skills and strategies allowed you to succeed, and what advice would you give to people who are, looking to tackle similar problems?
Yeah. So for me, it was basically a passion for the outcome. What is the outcome we're trying to deliver and the result that we're trying to deliver. I think for that sense, it's kind of been persistence and grinding out the result in terms of the data agenda against what we might have been the sort of traditional way of doing projects and systems. For me, as I mentioned already, but I think critical was learning to focus on value. Show me the money, or more to the point, show the business where the money is, so that they can see that new oil that really is basically translating there into terms. I think in terms of lessons that I've learned, I think from particularly like a lot of people who probably got a technical background, engineering, whether systems or industrial, I've had a lot of what you might be today known as kind of autistic characteristics. And a phrase that was used about me probably 10 or so years ago was I was accused of trying to beat people to death with logic. So what's been really helpful for me, and I think is important for people in our industry and in our space around data, is to get coaching and development in the area of understanding the motivations of other business leaders and how to better relate to what they're doing. Because I think we tend to be smart people. We think we know what the right answer is. We think we know that's the right way to do things. But others don't always have different motivations, and they also need to be brought on the journey. And I think that's the key one. And I think learning to convince the CFOs and turning it into financial value is a critical part of that. But also just generally understanding the other motivations of other business leaders is critical.
Absolutely. And, that's why actually when we, put together, let's say, a roundtable, we want to make sure that you guys actually have time to discuss it in a bit more depth, to maybe talk about also the strategies on how did you bring this into reality, what kind of communication strategies did you use. And your session as well will be structured in 3 parts. So first, you will be able to tell the audience members about your experiences and present that case study, and then they will be able to ask you specific questions. And again, we are talking about a small group of senior leaders. And then you will be able to pose a question to the audience that they can discuss within themselves, and you can go around and facilitate those conversations. And then they will present their conclusions to the entire group. Can you just tell us a bit more about what your session will actually cover?
So yeah, practical steps and experiences around building the business case around data, and how you actually connect the data model to the business operating model. And within that, then the application of data science techniques. And I think from the journey that I've been on, from evolving that from kind of linear regression and more rules-based through to machine learning and things like random forest modeling, and now onto really what you might call the cutting edge, which is deep learning with very complex mathematical models, and really building that story between the sort of data and the data scientist, and connecting that to the business in terms of value. So the practical steps around that, ultimately it is about the input and the output that you're trying to generate, and that's where I'll be focusing.
Fantastic. And talking about the practical steps, so if you think about the attendees who are heads and directors of different data functions in large organizations, how do you think that they will be able to put the insights that you will share with them into practice when they go back to their organizations?
That's a good question. I think there will be practical case studies. I think that's, and from a personal perspective, I've worked in different industries, so I can relate those back to different questions, that different problems that people may have wherever they're working. I think what's also important in this is really, what are the skills that you can build yourself and with your team, and when do you really need help? When do you need some to bring in the really smart data scientists? And how do you use those guys, and really how do you connect that back to business problems? I think it is as much about asking the right questions as it is actually about having the people who can provide you the answers, because you only get good answers if you actually ask them the right question. And it's those practical steps which I think leaders need, because I think as a leader, people expect you to get things done, but you need to be able to translate it into areas that your business colleagues can understand and actually know that you're actually solving the problems that they really care about.
Fantastic. And you shared a very valuable idea there. I think that it's not just about, providing the answers, but also asking the right questions. I mean, if you had to capture only one idea that you would like the audience members to take away from your session, what would that idea be?
So I think for me is it's understand the value of the data within the context of the business problem that you are trying to solve with the business leaders. I think people get the data is critical, but it's still intangible. So the output you've got to have in this journey is some kind of credible financial case powered by data. And the fact that you can bring the CFO on your journey, you'll always be able to oil the wheels.
Fantastic. And yeah, Eddie, I'm sure it will be a super interesting session. I look forward to hearing more on the actual roundtable. And on those sessions, so we will cover a wide range of topics, and usually the conversation tends to go into different areas as well, including all kinds of future technologies, including machine learning. Now, we will cover that on your session, but I mean, do you have any other areas of passion? If you think about technology, is there any particular field that you are, excited or passionate about, if you think about technology?
So I think blockchain technology is extremely exciting, far more so maybe than the wild gyrations of, say, the various cryptocurrencies that are like Bitcoin. But the actual blockchain technology, which can give you really secure transactions, I think is couple that with artificial intelligence, and we have some really high-powered capabilities.
Why do you think there's so much potential in that? So I do have like a fundamental understanding of blockchain technology, but my area of expertise doesn't really extend beyond buying Bitcoin. But in the technology itself, what do you see so much potential, and how do you aim to leverage that in the future?
Well, I think bringing it back to the topic of data, I mean, most of the problems that we've solved in businesses up to date have really been around data within our own firewall or within some very trusted companies in our supply chain or value chain. With blockchain, we're able to securely manage and collect data from all parts of the globe. And I think in terms of the business and personal operating model we find ourselves in, we have to be able to pull data from across the globe. We will not have enough data within the organization to solve the kind of problems. So being able to securely share, leverage, and trust data from across the internet, crossing corporate firewalls, that for me is the real application of blockchain within a kind of as it were for a data leader.
It's a super exciting area, and I know that people are getting more and more interested, and also the business applications are limitless, basically. So maybe in a year's time, you will lead a session on applying blockchain in a business environment. We'll see.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Hopefully based on some successful experiences.
Yeah.
And Eddie, again, we're very much looking forward to your session, and we arrived at the quickfire round in the interview. You probably know that I usually ask our guests just a couple of short questions that are more about you as an individual than about your specific session. So whenever you're ready, I'm ready to shoot up the questions, and you will have around 30 seconds each to give me an amazing answer.
Fire away. Yeah, fire away. Yeah.
Brilliant. So the first question is, what is the biggest mistake in your career that you almost made?
So for me, I think it's pretty straightforward. It's not taking enough risk. I think being an engineer, a data guy, we were basically very focused on security, confidentiality. But to be a true entrepreneur and a true business leader, you need to take more risks. And I know that I haven't taken enough in my life. And I probably was the guy who didn't bet on Apple or 15 years ago. But yeah, so taking more risks is definitely key.
Maybe buying more Bitcoin then?
Well, yeah, that could be though. Buying some Dutch tulips from. That's kind of, who knows? Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah. And the next question is, and it might be that the answer will be take more risks. But what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
So the best piece of advice, coming back to what I said earlier, is stop trying to beat people to death with logic. You have to understand different people's motivations in order to basically bring them on a journey with you.
Fantastic. And next question is, what is your most influential book and why?
That's a pretty easy choice for me. It's The Second Machine Age, which is the work, progress, and prosperity in a time of brilliant technologies, which is Andrew McAfee and Bjorn Johnson. That for me is nearly 10 years old since they first started writing about this, but they really opened the door in terms of transformative thinking around really how the world of work is being transformed by data and leading that through to artificial intelligence.
10 years is a long time in the 21st century. How relevant do you think that book is right now?
Well, basically the things that they talked about are actually happening. So I think they've written the various follow-up articles, but it's still absolutely, I would say it's required reading for anybody in this space, but for any good business leader.
Fantastic. We'll make sure to leave a link in the show notes so the audience members can check it out. Can you repeat the title of the book and the author?
Yeah, The Second Machine Age, and it's Andrew McAfee and Eric Jolfson.
Fantastic. I will definitely look into it. And the next question is, who is your most inspirational public figure or a historical figure, and why?
For me, I've always been, through my career, a follower of Bill Gates. I think he was the first guy to prove that you could be a really smart person and still build a mega corporation. But then increasingly, for the last 15 years, he's focused on having made more than $100 billion one way or another. His passion for changing the world and giving away all of his wealth in a very smart way to actually change the world. For me, he's just an unmatched individual.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember growing up, and all I knew that he was the CEO of Microsoft and the creator of Windows, right? But the kind of person that he turned out to be is truly remarkable.
Yep.
And next question is, what is your favorite quote, and how do you put it into practice?
So that's another one of those. So for me, it's customers will know what they want when I show it to them, which is a Steve Jobs quote, and it's particularly true in the area of data and related to topics of analytics, because it's actually quite futile trying to get people to detail out their requirements as it relates to data. You actually have to basically create prototypes and make it real for people and show them what they can have. And when you actually start to show people what they can have, then it actually comes to life. So that customers will know what they want when I show it to them is a mantra that I've taken for the last 10 or 15 years.
And apparently it served you very well.
Yep.
And the last question, Eddie, is what advice would you give to aspiring data leaders?
For me, it's you can never have too much data.
Yeah, I think that's a great note to finish on. You cannot have enough data, and I think that in the future we will only have more and more data. So thankfully we have professionals like you who take care of the organization and interpretation of that. So Eddie, it's been a great conversation. Thank you for being on the show, and I look forward to meeting you in person in March.
Pleasure, Les. Thank you very much. I look forward to being with the group in March. Thank you.
All the best.
Bye-bye.